Shalom, holy initiates and holy adepts. I am the Chief Magician of Mystery Babylon, and I will be your host, master, and teacher for this very holy, esoteric, divine teaching. Now, this teaching is the most advanced and highest and greatest, most divine introduction into HaSfiroth. Can't emphasize this enough. Now, although this video and teaching will constitute gate zero to my series on HaSfiroth, although it is gate zero, I cannot emphasize enough how ridiculously advanced this teaching is, ridiculously advanced and esoteric. So if you're a Christian, okay, a baby Christian coming to this channel, coming to this video, you're come to the wrong place. You're not going to understand what is going to be said and taught here. If you're a goy, again, you're not going to understand what is being taught and said here. This video, let me be very completely upfront, forward, and honest with you listening before I begin the teaching. This video is really strictly intended for actual holy initiates and adepts. These are those individuals that have actually penetrated our Kabbalistic texts deeply enough, as well as our exoteric texts, which include the Talmudim and the Midrashim, as well as mastery of the Tanakh. Okay? If you do not meet these prerequisites, then this video is not for you, and you're definitely not going to understand anything presented in this video, let alone fully understand it, okay? Now, while I imagine that this video might get 500 to 700 views in the next few weeks, lamentably, I personally feel that less than a handful of people watching this video will truly comprehend and understand what is being presented in this teaching, okay? Now, because this is the last generation, I'm fine and very open with other individuals who are interested and curious coming and watching the video, although you're probably not going to understand anything, or it's all going to go over your head, okay? The way the parable and analogy that I like to use is, think of an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old walking into a college PhD level class. If a 9-year-old, you know, if a math professor who's teaching PhD mathematics at a university is teaching a class full of about 30 students, and some 10-year-old walks in, do you think that 10-year-old is going to understand anything that math professor is teaching? Do you think he's going to understand the formulas and complex equations that he's writing up on the board? Absolutely not. The 10-year-old, everything that the 10-year-old is watching and listening to in this advanced PhD university class, he's not going to understand. It's going to go over his head. This is what this teaching is like, okay? This teaching is ridiculously advanced. This teaching is really strictly intended for Jews who are being initiated in actual Kabbalistic yeshivot, okay? There's a very, very small and select audience. In fact, my entire channel is really meant for a very small, select audience, for the true elite of Israel in this last generation, okay? These are inconvenient truths, but this is the truth. Now, before I begin the actual teaching, because this is such a holy, powerful, esoteric, very divine teaching, I just want to begin by stating a very, very quick, holy, divine prayer. Yod He Waw He Adonai Stai Tiftach Ufi Yagid Tehilatacha. Amen. So we'll begin the teaching now. Now, what you see before you is 3 diagrams. Now, these are the 3 most commonly used and known diagrams. Now, the one to your left is a standard Kabbalistic diagram of the 10 Sfiroth. The one on your right is a standard diagram usually associated with the Lurianic Kabbalah, but usually is associated incorrectly as a Lurianic diagram, but it's nevertheless a standard Kabbalistic diagram of the 10 Sfiroth, which includes the Ath, okay? Now, the diagram in the middle is a very, very esoteric Kabbalistic diagram that you're not going to find in any modern-day books or any modern-day books on the Kabbalah. It's very, very esoteric. This diagram is only included in about 2 or 3 Kabbalistic textbooks that are very esoteric, okay? The first book that ever introduced and made known this very, very, very esoteric diagram is a book that was written by a highly initiated grandmaster that lived about 700 years ago in the land of Israel, who was initiated in Israel. And the only other books after that contain this diagram are only about a couple of very super esoteric Lyrianic texts, one of them being Sefer Amak Hamalach. Now, in Gate 3 of this series, which is just a little bit more in-depth explanation into the diagrams of the Sfaroth, in that video, which is a prerequisite to this video, which I forgot to mention at the beginning. But if you have not seen the rest of my videos on the Sfaroth, the rest of the videos of my series on the Sfaroth, then I suggest you stop this video now and go watch them. Most especially Gate 3, which introduces this very esoteric diagram and gives a very detailed explanation to the origin and source for the construction of this esoteric diagram, among other details. So assuming that you have this knowledge, because I'm assuming those of you listening to the prerequisites, that you understand who is the Rab that is first credited with providing us with this extraordinarily esoteric, powerful diagram of the Sfaroth. It's very esoteric. This is why I'm always telling you that the vast majority of Jewish Kabbalists out there and occultists, most of them which are very impure, stupid, and retarded and impure, they don't know any of this. They're absolutely clueless, absolutely ignorant. They have no spiritual power whatsoever. They have no spiritual vision whatsoever. They're just one complete freaking, joke. They're all retards and very stupid. Okay, these are the facts. If you can't handle it, then you've come to the wrong place. Okay, I'm going to give you raw, unadulterated facts and inconvenient truths. Okay, I expect all of you listening to be spiritually and mentally strong, and not, mentally and spiritually and emotionally weak and inferior. Okay. So these are the three major diagrams, and the one in the middle is so esoteric that you can go online and you can look up all of the modern day English books that have been written on the Kabbalah and all of the material that's presented on the Kabbalah online, and you're not going to find this diagram because it's that esoteric. Okay, this is only the purview of masters and grandmasters of Israel. Okay, so these are the three main diagrams. Okay, and even if we exclude the middle diagram, there's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding just to the two standard diagrams, right? There are all these questions like, why does one diagram include Da'ath, and why does the other diagram not include Da'ath? What are the key differences between these two standard diagrams? Okay, and why? Now, if you go and you ask your standard, Rab, or even standard Jewish Mekabel, they're not going to have the answers to these questions because they don't fully understand these matters. These matters are too sublime, too advanced, and too mystical, too spiritual, I would say, for your average Mekabel or Rab to understand. They're just not going to. Okay, this is the purview of actual real masters and grandmasters of Israel, such as myself. Okay. So I'm beginning here with these three basic diagrams, and I expect all of you to already be aware of these three diagrams. Now, if you were not aware and did not know about the middle diagram, well, I guess that's fine. But if you're an avid subscriber of mine, if you're a disciple of mine, that's not acceptable, because I've done a video introducing this diagram already in Gate 3 to my series, so you don't really have an excuse. Okay. But if you're new to my channel, and you're a true advanced holy initiate and adept, and you don't know about the middle diagram, that's okay. That's what this whole teaching is about. So, whoa, I don't know what just happened, but that is not good. Okay, so that was really upsetting. I don't know what happened. That was like a total freak accident or something that happened. Very, very upsetting. I'm very upset that happened. But we're going to begin here in Talmud Babli, in Tractate Rosh Hashanah, in folio 32a. Okay. as I'm always saying, that the Talmudim is an extremely holy, powerful, and divine text. It's a highly encrypted divine text, just like the word of Hashem. Okay? And if you actually read many of the Kabbalistic textbooks out there, written by highly initiated true Mekabalim, there's many places where they will tell you that there's a lot of Jewish Rabbanan that misunderstand much of what is stated in the Talmud, and some of them go as far as to tell you that the vast majority of Jews and Rabbanan and scholars don't even fully understand what they're reading in the Talmud. And this is absolutely true. And as I've stated in other videos, this cannot be emphasized enough. Okay, what I'm going to be reading here is case in point. Okay, so we're in Tractate Rosh Hashanah in folio 32a, and the Gemara begins by stating, these 10 verses of kingship, to what do they correspond? Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said they correspond to the 10 praises that David said in Sefer Tehillim. So the Gemara asks, there are many. Rabbi Yosef said, the 10 verses correspond to the 10 commandments which were said to Moshe at Sinai. Rabbi Yochanan said they correspond to the 10 utterances through which the universe was created. And the Gemara asks, which are these 10 utterances? So the Gemara explains this is referring to the 10 times that the phrase "and he said," which in Hebrew is Vayomer, appears in the story of creation, or in Maaseh Bereshith. Okay, so this is referring to that very key Hebrew phrase in Parashat Bereshith, which is Vayomer Elohim, which is Hebrew for and the gods created. Now, again, understand, the correct translation of that phrase is "and the gods created." The subject is plural, not singular. Okay, and I don't have the time and space to get into this. I expect all of you listening to more than fully understand the essence of the matter here. Now, this is a very Kabbalistic disquisition going on here. Again, this is all encrypted text, because what these Rabbanan are cryptically referring to is none other than the 10 Sfiroth. Okay, because the 10 verses of kingship have everything to do with the 10 Sfiroth, and everything is interconnected. The number 10 is one of the greatest, most powerful, and holiest numbers that we find throughout the Holy Word, all in reference to the 10 Sfiroth. Okay, and these 10 utterances of Parashat Bereshith, of Maaseh Bereshith, are none other than the 10 Sfiroth. Okay, so now what's really going on here is, what they're really getting at here is, what exactly are the 10 utterances in Maaseh Bereshith? So now they're actually trying to delineate and enumerate these 10 utterances, because the Chazal of this generation had already established these things that they're talking about. And so now they're saying, okay, Chazal, in that generation, the Chazal, the Chachamim, the ancient Chachamim of that pertained to that generation, okay, in that generation, what they consider to be their Chazal, their ancient sages, that's what they're repeating here, their teachings, which are in reference to the 10 verses of kingship, and really ultimately the 10 Sfiroth. And so now they're going even deeper into the matter, cryptically, and saying, okay, let's actually enumerate and delineate these 10 utterances, which are linked to the 10 Sfiroth. So the passage continues by stating, the Gemara asks, does it refer to the repetition of the phrase Vayomer in Bereshith? Because there are only 9 such phrases, not 10. The Gemara answers that the phrase "in the beginning," which is Bereshith, is also considered an utterance, as it is written, by the word of Adonai were the heavens made, quoting Tehillim chapter 33, verse 6, which indicates that all of creation came into existence through a single utterance, after which all matter was formed into separate and distinct entities by means of the other 9 utterances. So the Gemara here raises a very critical point, a very momentous point, because we know that the most ancient of Chazal taught that the universe was created through 10 utterances. Now, the Jewish initiate and adept would then proceed by asking, okay, that has been established. We have established that. We agree with that. But what exactly are these 10 utterances? Because In fact, there's only 9 utterances. There's only 9 Wayomers in Ma'aseh Bereshith. There's only 9, not 10. So where's the missing 10th? Well, the first point, the actual first critical Kabbalistic point to mention is that it's totally fine that there's only 9. We know if you are fully initiated, you know quintessentially that there are 10. But through the occult mathematical principle of Imkolel, 9 is equal to 10. So everything is all fine and dandy, I would say. Okay, but if we want to get very technical here, we're going to get very technical, okay, then to the standard Jewish initiate and adept, this is not fine. This is not satisfactory, okay? This is not acceptable. So we need to reconcile this matter then, because essentially, from their viewpoint, we have one utterance missing, at least at first glance. So let us then continue to Pardes Rimonim. Now, actually, before I continue to Pardes Rimonim, as I just stated, that according to the holy initiate and adept who is being trained and initiated, at first glance, this seems like a valid concern and issue. Okay, that there's only 9 utterances, but according to the Gemara, the ancient sages reconcile this matter by saying that the 10th utterance is actually Bereshith, the first word in the Torah. They're saying the first word of the Torah is actually a cryptic manifestation or utterance. And the proof that they give of that is quoting Tehillim chapter 33, verse 6. So that's the reconciliation that is given. Okay, now whether that is satisfactory or acceptable to the holy initiate or adept is another question, at hand. But according to the Gemara, this is a valid and acceptable reconciliation of the matter, that the 10th utterance is esoteric and hidden and actually constitutes the first word of the Torah, which is Bereshith, and they give the scriptural proofs for this assertion, which is entirely acceptable and valid, as is taught in the standard Kabbalah. But now we're going to proceed to Pardes Rimonim. And now we're going to proceed to a master of Israel, a highly initiated master of Israel, none other than Musha Cordovero, who was a Sephardic Jew just like me, okay? Because the first and most highly initiated Mekabulim were all Sephardic Jews from Spain, okay? Which my entire family ancestry goes back all the way to very ancient medieval Spain, okay? I am counted among the bloodlines of the most ancient and most initiated Mekabulim and Rabbanan of medieval Spain, okay? So, in his magnus opus, Pardes Rimonim, in Gate 2, in Chapter 3, this is what he has to say about the 10 sayings. He says, and he's referring back to the Talmudic passage that I just quoted. He says, truthfully, Rabbi Yochanan's statement that Bereshith is one of the sayings is difficult. Actually, it's very, very difficult, as he's about to prove here. Now, before I finish reading this passage, I need to reemphasize that this is a very advanced teaching, and that this teaching is really intended for true holy initiates and adepts that actually have high intellects, okay? As most Jews have a higher intellect than the rest of the Goyim, okay? So, as I'm reading this passage, it's really intended for those that have a high intellect. For those of you that do not have a very high intellect at my level or close to my level, it might take you 1 to 2 minutes to fully understand this passage, to fully understand the implications and the momentous ramifications of what is being very geniusly stated by this highly initiated Mekabel, who has a very, very high intellect. Okay? Prithee understand this. Now, he continues by stating, it alludes to Chokhmah called Bereshith, and the enlarged Beit of Bereshith also alludes to it. If so, although Bereshith is one of the saints, there are still 9 and it is difficult. But what is the difficulty? If it is that Chokhmah is not part of the count, it should say that there are only 8. But if it is that Cathar is not part of the count, why is the answer about Bereshith acceptable to begin with? it should argue that although it is one of the saints, since it alludes to Chokhmah, it only makes 9. Now, this is the proof that this is not only is this a highly initiated Mekabel, but he has a very, very keen and strong intellect, very, very high intellect and high intelligence quotient to have this very, very high level understanding of the matter. He truly more than understands the quintessence of the matter here. Unfortunately, most Jews who do not have an intellect that is near our level or close to our level, when they read that Talmudic passage, most of what is being said there is going to go way over their head. Why? Because they're uninitiated and they don't have a high intellect, let alone a high SQ or spiritual quotient. Because this goes beyond intelligence quotients. We're really talking here about a spiritual quotient, or an SQ as I like to state. So you may need to pause the video here, and you may need to pause it for a couple of minutes if your intellect is not high enough to fully comprehend and understand the matter as it is now. But we're going to continue. So the solution then is that actually, despite the difficulty that has just been raised, the true question is how high is your intellect? How high is your spiritual quotient? Truly, I ask, how high is your spiritual quotient? Because this is all a test. Everything that is being relayed here is really a divine test to truly see not only how high your intelligence quotient is, but how high your spiritual quotient is. Because although this is a valid difficulty that has been raised, quintessentially there is a solution that seems paradoxical to that difficulty that has been raised. The truth of the matter is that quintessentially it is what is stated in the Gemara is correct. Although it may be perceived as a difficulty or even incorrect to the entry-level genius, to a true genius, to a true high-level genius, it's actually correct because he can see past the antinomies and the spiritual paradoxes at play. Okay? So the facts are that Bereshith is the first concealed saying, which indeed refers to Chokhmah. As it is written in Tehillim chapter 111, verse 10, Reshith is Chokhmah. And as is also written in Targum Yerushalayim to Bereshith chapter 1, verse 1, with Chokhmah Elohim created. So we have a Kabbalistic mystical equation between Reshith and Chokhmah as is outlined explicitly by the holy ancient divine oracles. Okay, so you have to be ridiculously fully initiated to understand why the difficulty that Musha Cordovero raised is in reality not a difficulty, and why what is stated in the Gemara is actually true. So if you're an entry-level genius reading that Talmudic passage, you may believe with all your heart and your mind that it's wrong, what's being posited there, but in reality it's true. But there's ignorance. There's a lot of spiritual ignorance at play there to the entry-level genius who was uninitiated. And we'll see here very shortly the quintessence of the solution. So what the implications and the ramifications of this then is that in reality, the first revealed sphera is Chokhmah. And so if the first revealed saying is Chokhmah, and there are 10 utterances, that then logically means that there are 9 Sfiroth below Chokhmah. Which would then come to mean that Cathar is not included within the actual 10 utterances of Ma'aseh Bereshith. Again, these are the implications and ramifications to the matters that have just been posited and presented, and are entirely veracious in nature. So it logically then would follow that the Tagin and the enlarged Beth of Bereshith would then come to represent Cathar. Now, according to the standard Kabbalistic models, to most low-level initiates and adepts, there are 10 Sfiroth which come to include Cathar. So how can there be 10 Sfiroth that come to include Chokhmah? There has to be a divine reconciliation to this matter. And indeed there is, as we will see here shortly. So it goes back to a very high-level Kabbalistic understanding, as is stated in many of our principal esoteric texts, that in reality, quintessentially, there are two beginnings. Right? There is a concealed beginning and there is a revealed beginning. Right? This is the mystery of Bereshith, because Bereshith can also come to signify a compound word vis-a-vis the letter Beth and the word Reshith, which can be read in Hebrew as two beginnings, or two beginning, because although there are two beginnings, spiritually these two beginnings are united and are a unity, which is why it is read as two beginning in the singular and not in the plural. This is, again, goes back to spiritual antinomies and paradoxes, and this is why these teachings are very mystical and are only meant for very special divine men like myself, and not for the profane and the masses who are very ignorant, very stupid, and very spiritually blind. So then Chokhmah, we may then state very mystically and Kabbalistically, simultaneously represents the first and second Sphira. Right? Chokhmah is the first revealed Sphira. Okay? Likewise, Chokhmah is second with respect to the concealed Reshith, or beginning, which is Cathar. So, paradoxically, or just really Kabbalistically, we can see how Chokhmah can come to signify both first and second, depending on reference, or the referential point of view. So then that leads us to tie this all into the most ancient of Kabbalistic texts, Sefer Yetzirah, in chapter 1 and verse 4, right, we read, 10 are the numbers of the ineffable Sfiroth. 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. Learn this wisdom and be wise in the understanding of it. Investigate these numbers and draw knowledge from them. Fix the design in its purity and pass from it to its creator seated on his throne. Now, this is the English translation given by Safaria, but I must be honest that this is not the best English translation of the underlying Hebrew. But nevertheless, the point here is that at the beginning of this verse, right, it comes to say something very momentous. It's one of the greatest and most powerful warnings in the teachings of the Kabbalah. It's saying, when it comes to the quintessence of the Sfiroth, you need to understand that there are only 10. The number associated and tied with the Sfiroth is 10. It's not 9, and it's not 11. Okay, now why did the ancient Mechabbalim and the ancient sages consider this so important? Why did they hold this teaching in the highest esteem and regard? Why is it so momentous? Because they knew from future prophecy, they knew that there would come an aeon when there would be a great debate and confusion and ignorance to this matter. And that's exactly what we have seen in the past 1,000 years. In the past 1,000 years, there has been a lot of ignorance and confusion and debate over the quintessence of the Sfiroth, whether there are 10 Sfiroth, are there 9, are there 11, right? For example, you read Maaseh Bereshith, and you find that there are only 9 explicit direct utterances. So from that referential point of view, the initiate or the adept could easily come to believe that there are only 9, and that would be his proof text. We have one standard Kabbalistic diagram that comes to include 10 Sfarot, but then we have another very esoteric Kabbalistic diagram that has also circulated that has 11 Sfarot. And from that diagram, which is considered very powerful and esoteric, many Kabbalists came to believe that in fact there are 11 Sfarot. And there was a lot of debate. There's a lot of books that were written and debates that went on between Kabbalists, debating whether, are there 11 Sfarot? Is this diagram correct? No, actually this diagram is wrong. I mean, there's Kabbalists, the two main diagrams that I presented early on, there has been a lot of debate and confusion regarding these two diagrams. We have some Kabbalists who have thought that only one of those diagrams is correct and the other one is wrong. Others who have tried to prove that they're both right. And you get all this confusion and all this ignorance. It's madness. And only the grandmasters, only the true grandmasters, which are less than a handful, have the true holistic understanding of the matter. And that's why HaSfiroth came on the scene to say, hey, you want to be a grandmaster, then understand what the grandmasters understand. That the final number in the end is 10. It's not 9, and it's not 11. Although 9 is equal to 10 in Kollel, although 10 is equal to 11 in Kollel, although there are occult mathematics involved here, the quintessence of the matter is that the final number in the end, it's 10. You need to understand this. Okay? That there be no ignorance, that there be no confusion, that there be no games involved here. So the nexus, the hidden nexus of everything that has been said thus far, that unites everything that has been said so far, that reconciles everything that has been said and posited thus far, that true hidden nexus is none other than the Sphira Da'ath, which is the least understood of all of the Sfiroth, right? I can't tell you how many stupid and retarded, impure, unholy occultists are out there, mostly all goyim, that tend to be fascinated with Da'ath, that say all of these things about Da'ath are untrue, unsubstantiated, and just demonstrate their immense foolishness and stupidity and ignorance for everyone to see, and in a lot of cases just retardation. The truth of the matter is that 99.9% of modern day occultists, Jew, Goy, doesn't matter. Most of them are impure and unholy anyways. They do not have a full comprehensive understanding of this Sphira. Although they may write books talking about this Sphira, like they know about it, they really don't. They have no idea. They're clueless. They're all really stupid and small. Some of them are just really retarded, to be honest with you. Okay, these are the facts. These are the facts. Okay, they may be inconvenient truths to many of you listening, but they're the facts. And I make no apology for stating hard, inconvenient, explicit, inconvenient truths. As I'm always saying, I am from the attribute of judgment. I'm not from the attribute of mercy. You need to understand this. I'm a real tough guy. So I want to then read to you a very key esoteric passage from a very Kabbalistic esoteric text written by an actual grandmaster, none other than Rab Shem Tov ben Shem Tov. This was an actual Shem Tov, meaning this guy was a very powerful holy magician and grandmaster of Israel. He wrote a very powerful Kabbalistic treatise called Sefer Emunoth. And I'm going to read to you this very, very key, very powerful esoteric passage that is in this book, and he states, all the Mekabalim agree that there are 10 Sfiroth. However, some among the greatest hold that Cathar is not part of the count, for it is Ein Sof. Just as the cause of all causes is not to be counted, so it is with Cathar, which has neither beginning nor end. Now, the Rashbi admonishes us in a few places concerning this, and this is the intention of Sefer Yetzirah when it states 10 and not 11. You know that the sages of the Mishnah all agree that Eliyahu appears to all the worthy ones. And we know of a tradition that he appeared to Rab Abraham the Pious, the head of the court. His son-in-law, the Rabad, and Yitzhak received the choicest esoteric teaching from him. He also understood that Sefer Yetzirah, 10 and not 11, means that Cathar is not part of the count. Da'ath is the one that completes the count. It is for this reason that Sefer Yetzirah calls Chokhmah the depth of Reshith, for it is the beginning. So this is very, very powerful. So you can see here in this passage that he's actually, the proof of what he's saying, listen, we are all disciples and students of one of the greatest grandmasters of Israel, none other than Rab Abraham. In fact, Rab Abraham was so ridiculously initiated. He was most definitely a grandmaster because he had divine visitations from Eliyahu. The true seal of a grandmaster is receiving divine visitations and visions from Hashem. The greatest seal is receiving divine visitations from Eliyahu, which this Rab and grandmaster did. And because he was privy to these secret visitations of Eliyahu Hanabi, he received very powerful, some of the most esoteric of divine knowledge and wisdom. So he had a full comprehensive understanding of the esoteric wisdom, which he imparted to his disciples and students, of which was the Rab Shem Tov ben Shem Tov, along with the Rabad, who's another very famous medieval Rab. So here they give the correct understanding to what is being stated in Sefer Yetzirah, which I have already posited and stated at the beginning of this video, which is that Reshith is Chokhmah, which is the beginning, the revealed beginning, the true revealed beginning of the 10 Sfiroth, meaning that there are 9 Sfiroth below Chokhmah. And that extra Sfiroth that reconciles everything is Da'ath. This is the key nexus that unites and reconciles all of the 10 Sfiroth. And so when Sefer Yetzirah states 10 and not 11, it's referring to all of the confusion and ignorance that would come to be as a result of that very esoteric diagram of the Sfiroth that includes Da'ath, because that diagram shows 11 Sfiroth. And so it's saying, if you see this very esoteric, powerful diagram, you're going to see 11 Sfiroth. But just know, although you see 11 Sfiroth, in reality, there are only 10. This is very, very, very powerful. Critical and very, very momentous to understand. Now I want to read to you another passage from a book, a Spanish book. This book was written in Spanish by one of the highest and greatest grandmasters of Spain in the Middle Ages, around the 15 or 1600s. And this was Rab Abraham Cohen de Herrera. He was literally probably the highest and greatest grandmaster of Spain for over, 500 years. He was an actual Knights Templar. So when I say the Knights Templar here, I'm actually talking about the secret society of the Knights Templars. He was a grandmaster of the secret society of the Knights Templars in Spain, and he was probably the highest, most initiated grandmaster of all of Spain for at least several centuries. Okay? I don't have the time and space to give a full autobiography of this individual, but I will tell you that I'm more than likely a reincarnation of this individual. Okay? And I actually plan to do a video sometime soon, presenting and introducing this powerful book that he wrote, which is probably the greatest, most mystical, most philosophical book that has ever been written in Spanish, and probably in any other language, bar none. And that book is La Puerta del Cielo, which is Spanish for the gate to heaven. Okay, and I plan to do a video on this book because it's probably one of the most powerful and greatest books that has ever been written in Spanish, bar none, and probably also in any other language for that matter, other than Hebrew. But not to digress, he writes in this very powerful book, he states, it is appropriate for everyone to acknowledge that the one called Da'ath is not a sphera. But because Kether, in its great superiority and concealment by which in rising towards and uniting with its infinite cause, it surpasses all other being, is not extended or revealed to the lower Sfiroth, it is therefore necessary to establish the Ath, which for its part descends and completes the number 10, joining itself to the other 9 Sfiroth, which Cathar does not do. And so we can see that this is the truth that is agreed upon and known by all grandmasters, even though these grandmasters may span countries and centuries apart. Now here's another seal and proof. Now this is the highest seal and proof of what has just been presented. And it's very simple. And it is that Sefer Yetzirah outlines 10 depths, beginning with Reshith, which of course is Chokhmah, thus excluding Cathar. So when Sefer Yetzirah cryptically delineates the 10 Sfiroth, it begins with Reshith. It begins with the depth of Reshith. It cryptically delineates 10 depths, beginning with Reshith, which is none other than Chokhmah, not Cathar. This is the highest and greatest proof and seal of the matter. Now, I should add that a while back I quoted from Musha Cordevero's Magnus Opus Pardes Rimonim. And in Pardes Rimonim, Musha Cordovero cites from Sefer Emunot, from the Rab Shem Tov bin Shem Tov. And in Pardes Rimonim, Musha Cordovero proves and demonstrates why he is a master of Israel and not a grandmaster. Because everything that I have just proven and presented to you here, everything, the entire understanding that Rab Shem Tov bin Shem Tov explicated in his book and tried to explain, this entire voracious understanding, Musha Cordovero does not agree with. He goes as far as to say in his Magnus Opus that this understanding is incorrect. I mean, I hope you can begin to understand the implications and the ramifications of all of this. Musha Cordovero quotes and cites a grandmaster in his Magnus Opus, not knowing that who he's quoting and citing from is a grandmaster to begin with, and rejecting his understanding and explanations of the matter. Here you have a grandmaster revealing powerful, very, very esoteric wisdom, telling you why it's very powerful esoteric wisdom, because it's coming from an actual true grandmaster who had visions and visitations from Eliyahu Hanabi. And despite Musha Cordovero knowing all of this, rejects him as a grandmaster and rejects what he is teaching in this book. So what does that say about Musha Cordovero? And yes, Musha Cordovero has a very high intellect. He's very highly initiated. But irregardless of how initiated he was, irregardless of how high his intellect was, it goes to prove and show to you why he was just a master. It goes to prove and show to you how thin the lines here are when you're in the holy domain. This is why you have to have a very, very high spiritual quotient. And you better be damn sure that you're right about what you're teaching and what you're saying and what you're writing about. I don't care how high your IQ is. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care what you believe in. Because in the end, somebody's going to be vindicated. Rab Shem Tov ben Shem Tov is vindicated. Musha Cordovero is not vindicated. He wrote blasphemous errors in his Magnus Opus Pardes Rimonim. He was a master. He was not a grandmaster. He thought of himself as a grandmaster in the end, but he was not. Ultimately, he was not. And this is why I'm always warning all of you, be careful with those Rabbanan that are out there. Be careful with those Jews out there that claim to be Rabbanan, that claim to be Kabbalists. We got a number of Jewish Kabbalists out there that are very famous. They got YouTube channels, they got ministries, and they're not fully initiated. They're not grandmasters. Some of them have egos and think that they're very highly trained, that they're very knowledgeable, and they're not. I could name some names right now, but I'm not going to. But I've already named at least one name in one of my other videos. Okay? This isn't a game. This is very serious stuff. If you go out and you start teaching and writing things that are erroneous, you're going to be held accountable for that by Hashem at the highest level and standard. It's not going to be pretty. Okay? When you're in the holy domain, and when you're in the Holy of Holies, there's no room for error. There's absolutely no room for error whatsoever. Cannot be emphasized enough. And yet we got a number of Kabbalists on record in books, among other things, that are teaching errors because they're not grandmasters and they're not fully initiated. I cannot emphasize this enough. I'm always warning. But unfortunately, we got too many stupid goyim, too many stupid Christians, and a lot of stupid Jews that just don't want to listen. They can't recognize a grandmaster. They didn't recognize Yeshua. They didn't recognize Hamashiach Yaakov Frank. They didn't recognize Abraham Abulafia. Do you know how many powerful grandmasters and divine figures have been unrecognized throughout history? The stone which the builders have rejected has become the chief cornerstone. Question: who are the builders? Who are the builders? I'm always going to all of these stupid, ignorant Rabbanan, and I ask them, I quote them this oracle, and I tell them, who are the builders? Who are the builders? The builders are the Torah scholars. They're the Rabbanan. There are a lot of the Mekabalim. They're the Jews that claim to be Kabbalists. They're the Jews that claim to be rabbis or Rabbanan. They're the Jews that claim to be Torah scholars. These are the builders. And they have rejected the chief cornerstone. I tell them, you're a builder. Are you a builder? Absolutely, you are all builders. All you stupid, ignorant, spiritually blind Jewish Rabbanan, wannabe Mekabalim, you're wannabes. You're all wannabes. You want to be Mekabalim, wannabe Rabbanan? You're all builders. You're all the builders. You're the builders. Don't be stupid. I hope all of you have common sense to understand what is being meant by build. They're the builders. They're the ones that build Jewish society, that have built the yeshivot and the synagogue. They're the builders, and they have rejected the chief cornerstone. Do you understand the danger here? You understand the irony here, that the builders, the very builders, have rejected the chief cornerstone. So do not be surprised, do not be amazed that I myself am rejected by many stupid goyim and many stupid Jews who have no eyes to see and no ears to hear. Woe unto all of them. Well, I surely have digressed for the past minute, but let's continue back on the holy, narrow path. So, understanding that Da'ath is the key, that it is concealed, it's the concealed key, I don't have the time and space to give a full disquisition on Da'ath. It's not even understood by the vast majority of Mekabalim. In fact, you won't even find much written about Da'ath in many of the standard Kabbalistic books, because it's that esoteric, it's that hidden and secret. So I'm going to read you one very powerful passage from Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar in folio 99b, which has some very, very momentous, well, actually it has maybe but one, but very powerful and momentous detail regarding Da'ath and revealing the quintessence of Da'ath. It says, and of this Da'ath it is said, and Adam knew his wife Chawa, quoting Sarah Bereshit 4:1. Now, the English word there, knew, comes from the Hebrew root word Da'ath. So the word Da'ath is inherently in that verse. Not the soulmate, but Da'ath, which is the middle pillar. So the conjugal union of the father and the mother, and this son is the conjugal union of the father and the mother. He is the middle pillar who raises and supports everything. Therefore, the father and the mother are supported by the middle pillar, and he is the conjugal union between the mother and the son, like this. Hey, wow, hey, which is a divine name. So this passage is coming to reveal and illuminate that Da'ath represents the nexus of the middle pillar. More relevantly, more importantly, he's actually the highest son. of Yah. He's the son of Yah. He's the highest son of Yod He Vav He. He's the highest son within the Sfiroth. And the Mashiachim that have reincarnated through the Aeons are all images of Da'ath. They're all inferior images of Da'ath, made in the image of the hidden supernal Da'ath. Now, most Jews, they're not Christians. Most Jews don't know the Son of God. Especially most Kabbalists, they don't know the Son of God. You don't hear a lot about the Son of God in a lot of the Kabbalistic books, except for some of the principal texts. But even though the Son of God is talked about and explained in some of our most principal Kabbalistic texts, for whatever reason, in the vast majority of Jews, there is this very powerful, nefarious, spiritual blindness to the Son of God because of their anti-Christian bias. And because of that, this is a crutch to almost every Jew, unless you're an exception like me, unless you're a divine exception like myself. This is a crutch and weakness to almost every Jew. This is why almost every Jew is inferior. There's only a handful of Jews that are superior, that are in the same class and order as me. But the vast majority of Jews, this is not the case. And they don't understand the Son of God. They don't like to talk about the Son of God. They don't really talk about the Son of God. And the most powerful Sphira is Da'ath. And they're absolutely clueless and ignorant of it because of this crutch, because of this anti-Christian bias, because they don't know Yeshua HaMashiach, because they don't know Shabbatai Zvi as Mashiach, because they don't know Yaakov Frank as HaMashiach, because they don't know the holy mysteries behind HaMashiach Yisrael. You understand what I'm saying here? This is very powerful stuff. They're inconvenient truths for a Jew listening, for a stupid, ignorant, spiritually blind Jew listening. If any of you Jews listening right now are spiritually blind, you have problems believing in Yeshua. You're like, oh, I can't believe in Yeshua. It's too hard for me. You're an inferior Jew. You're an inferior Jew. You might even be a bastard Jew for all I know. So this is the key and nexus to everything, Da'ath, which ultimately represents the Son of Yah, the highest Son of Yah. And this goes back to what I said earlier about the retardation and the stupidity. I wish there were stronger words that I could use than stupidity and retardation to describe all of these impure, evil, unholy occultists that are mostly goyim. They like to talk about Da'ath. They like to think that they're revealing all of these holy mysteries of Da'ath. They don't have one damn clue about Da'ath. If they did, they would be Christians and they would be avid followers of Yeshua HaMashiach, Yeshua Bar Yosef, but they're not. They don't know Yeshua. If you don't know Yeshua, listen to me, if you're a goy and you don't know Yeshua, if you have not accepted Yeshua into your heart as Lord and Savior, and you don't believe in Yeshua's HaMashiach Yisrael, you don't know Yeshua as HaMashiach Yisrael, if you don't have a close relationship with Yeshua HaMashiach as a goy, you don't know shit about Da'ath. You don't know shit about Da'ath. Don't even open your mouth to speak about Da'ath, because you're going to demonstrate your stupidity and your retardation. Okay? I mean, I get easily triggered. I have zero tolerance. I have zero tolerance for spiritual stupidity and spiritual ignorance. But that's just me, because I'm from the attribute of judgment. I'm not from the attribute of mercy, okay? So understand this. So let us proceed now to the book of Hebrew Proverbs, because this is where we're going to start to get very interesting, and we're going to get very technical with the differences between these diagrams of the Sfiroth and how everything is interconnected and related. So we read in Proverbs in chapter 4, verse 5. I'm going to read to the original Hebrew translation, which is Kne Chochma Kne Bina, which the literal translation is acquire Chochma, acquire Bina. Okay, that's the literal translation of the verse. But as I'm always saying, there are numerous levels and translations to the underlying text, because Hebrew is a very polysemous language. Now, I'm going to provide to you now a very esoteric translation of the underlying verse, which is the stem of Chochmah, the stem of Bina. Okay, and this is how it gets esoterically translated by many of the grandmasters and masters of Israel. So what we learn from here then, okay, what the Masters of Israel will teach is that what the verse on the very esoteric level is coming to intimate is that we have two stems here, meaning that there seems to be some sort of division or separation between Chokhmah and Bina, because two stems, two lines are being delineated here. So what the verse is really saying then on the most esoteric level then is that Chokhmah and Bina quintessentially are not on the same line. They're not on the same stem. They're actually two separate and different stems, which goes back to the prevalent diagrams of the Sfiroth, which actually have two lines, two pillars, or two stems for both of these Sfiroth. So keep that in mind, because we're only focusing on one level here. There's many layers and levels to this teaching here, okay? So don't get too caught up in one aspect here. But this is one very pivotal and momentous aspect to keep in mind as we continue here. Now, I also want to read to you another verse in the book of Hebrew Proverbs in chapter 8, verse 14. And I'll read you the original Hebrew, which is, Li etza wetoshiya ani bina li gebura, which the literal translation is, as it's usually translated by most English translations, is counsel and security are mine, I am understanding my power. But now let me reveal to you a more profound esoteric translation of the verse. This is a very, very powerful esoteric translation of the verse, which is, the tree and its security are mine. I am Bina, and Gebura is mine. So I'm hoping by now you can make to understand why the book of Proverbs is a very, very powerful text, right? Most people are just familiar with the loose English translations of the text. If they knew Hebrew and they were initiated, they would understand how the book of Proverbs is an entire esoteric manual for working and operating with the Sfiroth, but more importantly, understanding the Sfiroth. As we are seeing here with just two verses. I've just cited two verses here. All I've done is cite two esoteric translations of two verses in Proverbs, and already it's imparted very powerful knowledge and wisdom of the nature and essence of the Sfiroth. Okay, I hope you can begin to understand the vast power here of knowing and understanding Hebrew and being fluent in Hebrew and Aramaic. I hope you can begin to see and prove and see now and understand why I'm the chief magician of Mystery Babylon, why I have an IQ of 200, why I have an SQ that's off the charts, higher probably than 200, okay? I mean, you're dealing with a divine being here almost, okay? No exaggeration, okay? No ego here. Don't confuse my declarations of the facts with hubris. Do not confuse my declarations of the facts with hubris. Don't be stupid. Don't be foolish. So from here we learn that the sphere of Gebura belongs to Bina. And we have reference to the tree, which is none other than the tree of life, which is really the tree of the Sfiroth. But from here then, from this verse, we learn that Gebura belongs on the pillar or the line or the stem of Bina, which is why we see Gebura directly below Bina in the standard diagrams of the Sfiroth. Everything goes back to the scriptures, okay? If you are stupid and retarded enough to think that these diagrams were pulled out of some Jew's ass, you're really effing stupid and retarded. These are divine diagrams. This knowledge, this wisdom, it wasn't made up by some Jewish man. It wasn't pulled out of somebody's ass. The source of all this divine knowledge and wisdom is Yod He Vav He. When you look at the diagram of the Sfiroth, its entire basis and structure is rooted in the holy divine scriptures. If you don't know this, if you don't understand this, please leave. You're profane. Okay, so now we're going to proceed to part 2. Up to this point, I've laid the groundwork and foundation to take it to the next level, to very, very advanced level. So what follows here is going to be even more ridiculously advanced knowledge and wisdom. If you did not understand everything that has been stated up to this point, if you're fuzzy about some of the details, if you don't have a full understanding, then you're not ready for part 2 here, because part 2 is 10 times more advanced than what has been presented up to this point. Okay, so you should probably leave right now and go spend a good 10 years or however many years you need to study and master the divine holy texts, okay, and get up to speed, okay? Because what follows from this point on is even more esoteric and more advanced than what has been presented up to this point, okay? So with that said, let us continue. For those that are true holy initiates and adepts and truly understand what has been presented thus far. And Baruch Hashem, if this is the case with you, blessed are you. So now we're going to discuss the mystery of the Nikudim. As we know, there are many mysteries behind the Nikudim. I'm going to read you a very powerful esoteric passage from Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar in folio 105a that reveals just some of these very powerful mysteries behind the Nikudim. It begins by saying, Kether is over Chokhmah and Bina, which is Segol Ta. Cholam is over Zere. Segol is the vowel point below Zere, which is Chesed and Gebura. And Tifereth is below. Netzach, Chod, and Yesod in the middle is Shurek, and therefore when Tifereth is in the middle, he is the cantillation mark Shal Sheleth. Shba is 2 points, and when the waters strengthen over fire, or the fire is over the waters, or when Yesod is over Malchut, every Sphira, this one over that one, in every place is Shba. This is a very, very advanced passage. If you're not a Jew, if you're not a highly initiated, you're not going to understand any of this. So I'm not really going to bother to explain much of it either, because at my level, at the level you should be to understand this, you should more than understand what is being said here. But nevertheless, to make things a little bit easier to understand, I provided a diagram to what is being stated here, because the quintessence of the structure of the Sfiroth is really what's being elucidated and illuminated in this passage. So here what we have is we have a visual representation of what has just been stated, right? So at the beginning it starts by saying that Chokhmah, that Kether, Chokhmah, and Bina are basically in the form of the Nikud Segol Ta. So you can see here what I have circled at the top, the 3 points at the top are in the form of a Segol Ta. Then it says that Chesed and Gebura are in the form of Zere, which you can see they're circled as well. And then it goes on to say that Chesed, Gebura, and Tifereth are in the form of Segol, which you can see there that I delineated there, that Chesed, Gebura, and Tifereth are in the form of a Segol, which essentially is an upside down version of Segol Ta. Then it then goes on to say that Tifereth and some of the surrounding Sfirot are in the shape of the cantillation mark Shal Sheleth, which you can see there I have indicated, very loosely though. And then it says that Yesod and Malchut are in the form of the Shba, which you can see there I have circled. So when you understand all of this put together, you can then see how the passage is essentially delineating the structure of the Sfiroth through the holy mysteries behind the Nikudim, of which are multitudinous in nature. But there are contradictions in this very ancient, holy, esoteric principle text. So thus far, the passages that I have cited from Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar have come to delineate the general structure of the most widely known diagram of the Sfiroth. But there are contradictions. And unless you're ridiculously highly initiated like me, most people studying and reading Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar won't know this. I can tell you right now that 99% of Jewish Kabbalists who have studied Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar, who even think that they have mastered that text, actually have not mastered it, because there's no book. What I'm going to reveal now is not written in any Kabbalistic book. Okay? What I'm about to reveal now and demonstrate and show to you is not known by any other Jewish Kabbalist as far as I'm concerned. And there is no book that exists that's going to explain and teach the way I'm explaining and teaching everything that I have explained and taught up to this point. In fact, there is no book, there's no Jewish Kabbalist that has ever explained or taught everything that I have just explained and taught up to this point, and will continue to explain until the end of this video and teaching. Let this be a proof, let this be a seal to all of you listening that indeed I am a son of King Dawid, and I am the chief magician of Mystery Babylon. Amen. So in Sefer Tikkunei HaZohar in folio 40b, it states, the middle pillar is called the prayer of every mouth. Rather, it is the Ben Yah, which is the son of Yah from Binah. Because Ben Yah is a permutation of Binah, the holy mystery behind Binah, that is contained within Binah. And he is the middle pillar. He is the average or middle of the three letters, which are Yod, He, Waw, which are included in Binah, and she is the average middle, like the body is between the two arms. Now, notice what is being said here, okay? The passage is stating that Binah is essentially the middle pillar. She says the son of Yah, is the nexus of the middle pillar, which is none other than Da'ath. And it goes on by stating Binah is also in the middle pillar. It says she's the body between the two arms, meaning that she has to lie on the same stem and line as Da'ath, meaning she is in the middle. But we have a problem because we all know that Chesed and Geburah are the two arms. So if Chesed and Geburah are the two arms, which we know is an absolute established fact, how can you have Binah above Geburah, which is the left arm? That's not what this passage is saying here. This passage is not what is in Proverbs. It tells us that Binah is above Geburah, that Binah is on the same pillar as Geburah, which would mean that Binah is to the left. Whatever body part is above the left hand must represent Binah, but there is no body part above the left hand. The head, the torso, is in the middle. Binah, which comes to include and represent part of the head, is in the middle. There's a very momentous contradiction here. Powerful, has not been seen, has not been mentioned, has not been understood by any Kabbalist that has come before me that we know of. You won't find this in any Kabbalistic treatise or book. A grandmaster like me that has openly revealed himself and openly revealed his teaching has not happened ever in the history of time. This is the first time that this is happening, that anything like this has ever happened, because we are in the last generation. I hope you can understand how momentous all of this is. I hope you can understand the implications and the ramifications of all of this. So keep that in mind, in addition to what I've already relayed and shown. So, as I already stated, right, all of the standard Kabbalistic texts tell us that the first three Sefirot are known as the head or the brain. And we know that the head and the brain is in the middle of the body, which is the torso, which we also know from the standard Kabbalistic texts that Tifereth comes to represent the heart or the torso of the body, who is also in the middle pillar. So the head is in the middle and the torso is in the middle. They're all lined up on the same middle pillar. And we know that Chesed and Geburah represent the arms, but we know that the brain and the head do not extend to the arms. As the passage just told us, Binah has to lie on the middle pillar. It makes no sense for her to be on the left. But let me read you another passage that affirms and seals this. From the mouth of two witnesses, let a matter be established. So this is our second witness. Found in the same book in folio 120b, it states, let us make Adam, quoting Bereshit chapter 1 verse 26. this is upper Chokhmah, which is in the image of Cathar. And furthermore, let us make Adam, this is the middle pillar. In our image, this is Chokhmah. According to our likeness, this is the upper mother, like Adam of Bria, Adam of Yetzirah, and Adam of Asiyah. In the image of the Most High Cathar is Chokhmah and Bina. Therefore, in the image of the middle pillar is Zadik and lower Shekhinah. HaSfiroth of everything is Atziluth. So here it's telling us, okay, Chokhmah is in the image of Cathar, and we know that Cathar lies on the middle pillar. So it logically then follows that Chokhmah would also have to be in the middle pillar. And it says that the upper mother, which is Bina, is also made in that image, which would come to include her in the middle pillar. Then it says that the image of the middle pillar is Zadik, and we know that he's on the middle pillar, as well as lower Shekhinah, and she's in the middle pillar as well. So on the standard Kabbalistic understanding is that Cathar, Zadik, and Shekhinah all lie on the middle pillar, with the exception of Chokhmah and Bina. But according to this passage, they're saying, no, the standard Kabbalistic teaching actually in Sooth is that not only do Cathar and Zadik and Shekhinah lie on the middle pillar, but so do Chokhmah and Bina, because they're all images of the middle pillar, and therefore must all lie on the middle pillar. And we already know why it's common sense that they absolutely must lie on the middle pillar. Everything is interconnected here. But let me give you a third witness. This is in folio 9b in Sefer Tzikuner Zohar, and it states, this is Bina, and they are to the right and to the left, which are Chesed and Geburah. Notice what it says here. It says that Bina is in the middle, because it says to the left of Bina is Chesed, and to the right of Bina, to the left of Bina is Geburah, and to the right of Bina is Chesed. That's the intimation in this verse. By the way, all of the English translations of the source Hebrew text in this video are my own lucid English translations of Sefer Tzikuner HaZohar. So this is a third witness, the third proof and seal, that Bina must lie on the middle pillar, which would force Chokhmah to also lie on the middle pillar. So this is the great arcanum then. We now arrive at the revelation of the greatest and highest arcanum. We know from the standard holy esoteric principle texts that the middle pillar is represented by the Hebrew letter Waw, and that Waw has a gematria of 6. So if we know that the middle pillar is Waw and has a gematria of 6, then it logically follows that the correct diagram must have 6 Sfiroth in the middle. But the incorrect diagram that is prevalent and has been prevalent for over 1,000 years includes Tifereth being surrounded by 6 Sfiroth. And they delineate and call that the middle pillar. But the hexagram that comes to represent Zera and Pin is not a pillar, because a hexagram is not a line. And so the second arcanum is that we read in Sefer Bereshith in chapter 2, verse 10, it says, and a river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and it became into 4 heads. Now, if you look at the prevalent Kabbalistic diagram, it has 6 outer heads, not 4 outer heads, as is being delineated Kabbalistically by this verse. So that's the second highest and greatest arcanum, as it relates to the diagram. Now, what you see before you is a copy of a very ancient original manuscript of Sefer Emek HaMelech. And you can see here in this particular section of his book, you can see there his drawing of what we would term the correct diagram of the Sfiroth. So here's what he has to say next to that diagram. And this is found in Sefer HaMelech by Naftali Elchanan Ashkenazi in Gate 12 in Branch 6, entitled The Body of Arich and Atik Yomin in page 474, which is probably some of the most advanced Kabbalistic text you're probably ever going to read in your life. But he begins this branch by stating, you need to know that the standing order of the HaSfiroth of Arich and Pin is not like the other Partsufim, because all the Partsufim go out from their Chokhmah and Bina on either side equally according to the order of the scale. But in Arich and Pin, it is not so, as the three first ones are in a line, as he shows in that diagram. So now this leads us to our final conclusion and the highest and greatest revelation of the highest and greatest arcanum, which is that all of this confusion and ignorance and debate on these varying diagrams of the Sfiroth is not an issue of what is right and what is wrong. The early Mekabbalim who debated this saw this as a black and white matter. They said their understanding was there's only one diagram of the Sfiroth. There can only be one correct diagram of the Sfiroth. That was their understanding, because the early Mekabbalim, they were still quite a distance away from the true fountain and source. Okay? It wasn't until Chamishak Arizal came on the scene, until Yitzhak Luria came on the scene, that he revealed the full quintessence of the matter. And he taught his disciples, he said, there are many correct diagrams of the Sfiroth, all depending on which Partsuf, which divine configuration you're referring to, right? A Partsuf, in essence, is a divine configuration of the Sfiroth. And there are various divine configurations. I mean, we have, at base root, we have 5 Partsufim. At base root, we have 5 different possible divine configurations. But those are the base configurations. There are still even higher and many more divine configurations beyond that are far beyond the kind of scope of this video and far more esoteric. So that's the correct understanding. And Naftali Elchanan, being a grandmaster and a disciple of the Arizal, is the first Mekabah that comes on the scene and reveals this very powerful understanding from Chamishak Arizal, saying all of the Mekabbalim before us, they didn't have the full correct understanding until the Arizal came on the scene. Once the Arizal comes on the scene, now it's possible, by being properly initiated, to have full holistic understanding of these sublime, esoteric, divine matters. So what he's saying is that the diagram that most of these Kabbalists are dealing with is an inferior diagram. And the diagram that I am now presenting to you, which was first presented by a grandmaster about 300 or 400 years before him, was actually the highest and most superior diagram of the Sfiroth, which he says is in relation to the Partsuf of Arich and Pin. So if you go back to these 3 diagrams now, then Naftali Elchanan now tells us that the middle diagram is the diagram of the Sfiroth that refers to Arich and Pin. So then the question is, what Partsuf are the other 2 diagrams in reference to? Well, the answer is that these 2 diagrams are the correct diagrams for Zer and Pin. And they represent different states. These two diagrams represent the two different states of Zeir Anpin. A fully revealed state of Zeir Anpin and a not so revealed state of Zeir Anpin. Now, to get any deeper into the matter is far beyond the ken and scope of this video, so all you need to know for now is that these two diagrams, which are correct, are in relation to Zeir Anpin, who is inferior and lower than Arich Anpin. Now, these here, what you see before you, are the highest, most sublime, most powerful, most esoteric diagram of HaSfiroth, because this diagram that you see before you is the highest, most sublime, most esoteric, most powerful diagram, most superior diagram of HaSfiroth, which is in reference and relation to the highest Partsuf, which is Arich Anpin. Now, to the left is just my horrendous, horrific attempt at drawing the correct diagram. I'm a really horrible artist. I have no artistic talent or ability whatsoever. The diagram on the right is a very gorgeous, very powerful, very beautiful 3D rendition of the correct diagram that was done by my chief disciple, Francisco Rivera. He's one of my most beloved and probably the most eldest of all of my chief disciples. I think he's probably the most advanced, or very close to being one of the most advanced of my chief disciples. He's a ridiculously highly initiated, true Mekabel. He's probably one of my most advanced, or close to being my most advanced disciple, all of my chief disciples. He's a very, very beloved disciple, and I pray nothing but shalom and great blessings. I mean, he has a very, very powerful divine gift for art and drawing. He's a very gifted artist, and he's actually did the artwork for my magnus opus, which was a very divine, esoteric, Kabbalistic commentary on the Book of the Apocalypse. The artwork to that book he did, which is a very, very powerful mandala and image, very powerful supernatural divine image. And then there's this very powerful supernatural divine image that he did for the whole world, because it's my hope and prayer that we reveal this more superior, more powerful diagram of the Sfiroth that has been hidden and concealed for thousands of years. And so I want to give him thank and praise for doing this image for not only me, but for the whole world. And all he has done is drawn down massive amounts of blessings upon himself and upon his family for all of the divine work that he has done for Yod He Vav He. So I want to thank him immensely for this, and I'm sure he's listening. And if anyone wants a copy of this image in a high resolution, copy of this image, please email me, and I will send you this very powerful image. Now, I need to make a few points to this image here. So this is the image that you see here before you that my chief disciple did. The pathways, the 22 pathways that are listed there are actually incorrect. He's in the process right now of amending the diagram to rectify and put the correct pathways to the diagram, as this was just a rough draft that he sent me. But if you email me, I will send you the correct and very powerful version. This is a very inferior, useless diagram because the 22 pathways listed here are incorrect. But other than that, it's a very powerful diagram. But if anyone's interested, again, please email me, and I can send you a high resolution image of the correct diagram. So I'm going to conclude by stating just some very secret notes to what has been presented. So the correct diagram of Arich Anpin, as I just shown you, has 21 pathways connecting all 10 Sfiroth. It begins with Chokhmah and not Kathar, because Kathar is the concealed beginning and therefore must not be presented in the correct diagram. So it is concealed as the true 10 Sfarot begin with Chokhmah and not Kathar. Now there are 21 pathways, which equals 22 pathways in Kollel. So the first path that begins from Chokhmah to Bina actually is the pathway of Beth and not the letter Aleph. In the mystery of the Torah beginning with the letter Beth and not Aleph. This is a very, very great holy mystery. You will also duly note that there are 4 heads, which come to signify and represent the 4 chambers of the Tefillin, okay, which is explained in many of our principal Lurianic texts and even Kabbalistic principal texts. You'll also duly note that the middle pillar, which is Vav, which has a gematria of 6, is correctly represented in the diagram because you see 6 Sfarot in the middle pillar. So these are all seals and proofs that what has been presented is Amen, Amen, verily, verily, the highest, most superior, most powerful, correct diagram of the Sfarot in relation to the partsuf of Arich and Pin. So with all of that said, Shalom, Wassalam, Amen.